guys, welcome to Google I/O. I hope you're having a great time here. I'm Parul Soy.
And I'm Lawrence Moroney.
And we're here today to talk to you about Pirate Metrics and how they provide a framework that helps you launch your app, grow your audience, and sustain it in the long run. So both Lawrence and I wanted to start up at Google, and after a lot of extensive market research, we decided to do something that nobody at Google has ever done before.
So we built a chat app. I told you they'd laugh. It's called Really Friendly Chat, and if you've done any of the Firebase Code Labs, you've probably heard of Friendly Chat, you've probably built Friendly Chat. If you haven't done so, check it out. It's a great way of learning Firebase. It touches on a lot of the technologies in Firebase. But we decided, like, you know, Friendly Chat, we wanted to do a little bit more, right?
Yeah. So with Really Friendly Chat, we added translation, so you can chat with people even if they don't speak the language. So Lawrence, could you show us a quick demo?
Sure. Can we switch to the demo box? OK, so here I am using Really Friendly Chat. And so I'm using an iPad emulator, and I'm chatting with my friend Ayako, who has exceptional taste, and she's using an Android device. And what happens is I'm chatting in English, and as you can see, what I'm saying in English, she's saying in Japanese. So if we're having this conversation, she says, nice to meet you, and then I realize, I might be impinging on her time, so I'll ask, hey, what time is it over there? And so I'll ask her that, and I'll send it to her, and I've typed it in English, and then she will instantly see it appearing on her Android screen in Japanese. And then I don't read a word of Japanese. If there's any Japanese readers here, you can hold me accountable for this. So apparently it's translated, and she sees that. So then she'll send something back to me. Whoops. She'll send something back to me like this, and then she says, oh, it's dinner time. I go, oh, OK, I'll better leave you alone then, and I'll get back to my demos, right? I'll get back to talking at I/O. But this is Really Friendly Chat. We wanted to make something so that let's build a startup together, Parul and I. And in this startup, we say we have this application, and we want to grow this application. So let's change back to the slides, please. So Parul is going to be our growth hacker, and she's going to teach us how we're going to grow this application.
So like we mentioned, with Really Friendly Chat, we wanted to launch it in a systematic manner, so we turned to Pirate Metrics. But before we understand Pirate Metrics, let's first go through a very typical user lifecycle. Users are acquired in a lot of different ways, through public relations, through social media, through ads. They all play a role. But once you acquire a user, your job is really half done. You might have just gotten them to the landing page of your website, but what you really need to do is to make them experience the unique selling proposition of your product. For a social media product, this could be to follow friends, interest. For a game, it could be to complete one level. You need to ensure that the user realizes and experiences that one unique thing about your product.
So, of course, now, once you've gotten your user and you've activated your user, you generally face an uphill battle to retain these users. How many times have you built an application and you put it out there? Maybe you've done a marketing campaign, you've gotten a ton of installs, but then after week 1 or week 2, your installs go down. How are you going to hold on to these users? How are you going to make sure that they keep using your applications after the first few days? So the goal for any healthy product is to keep your users coming back. If you're churning all of these users, then all that money you've spent on acquiring them, it's kind of gotten wasted. So one way of doing this is friends help friends discover great apps, and friends help friends discover great content. So your users can be your greatest and your strongest advocates. No acquisition strategy is as powerful as one where your users are telling their friends and their family and people around them that your app is awesome. But in order to be able to get your people to do this, you really need to reduce the friction. So we're going to talk about some of the technologies in Firebase that will help reduce this friction and stop the users from being able to share with their friends.
And ultimately, we all want to monetize our users. Each of your users is amount a different amount of money. And you want to identify who's worth more than the other, and then tailor your product experience to serve this audience better. So let's summarize the user lifecycle. We have the following 5 stages: acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue.
So if we put all of these together, this is called Pirate Metrics. And this is the strategy our imaginary startup is going to use to launch this application. And speaking of launching things, anybody want a T-shirt? How about this side? Oh, right in his hands. How about that? Hopefully our launch of our application will be as successful. But Pirate Metrics, it's all about acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral, and revenue. And it's called Pirate Metrics because if you put the first letters of all of these together, you get R.
So the first, as we mentioned, is acquisition. And here we want to understand how to acquire users. So we came up with 3 strategies. We bought ad space and web searches and optimized our spends there. We also built a great website that people can use to discover our application. And we also decided to work through partners to spread awareness about our application. Let's see how we dive into each of them. The first is advertising campaign. So let's say as a user, you're searching traveling to Japan. You'll probably see an advertisement. This will take them to the landing page and will tell them more about our application. Now, because you've ended up in the website through an ad about Japan, you might get a tailored experience with some images about Japan, some traveling recommendations. And the site can contain a dynamic link that has context to connect them to the pen pal in Japan. Now, if a user has the application, it will launch it directly. If they don't, it will take them to the Play Store page of the web Play Store page where you can go and install the application and then end up right inside the app where you can chat with someone directly in Japanese.
And as Parul mentioned, this is built on dynamic links. And anybody here use dynamic links for Firebase? OK, a few. Cool. So dynamic links, what makes them really special is the fact that they maintain context through an install session. It's not just a link to the landing page of your app in the Play Store. So if you have a link, for example, in our case with Really Friendly Chat, what we wanted to do is if somebody visited the landing page for having pen pals in Japan, that then there would be a context to link them to a pen pal in Japan. So once they click on it and they launch the app, instead of fishing for people in Japan or finding people to be a pen pal with, they get linked to one directly. And in addition to this, that's how dynamic links work. And in addition to this, because this is Pirate Metrics, we want to start thinking in terms of analytics. We're just launching our app for the first time. We don't know how successful it's going to be. We don't know how successful dynamic links or any of our strategies are going to be. And because we've used Firebase for this, then we can say, now we have all of these analytics that we can put into it. We can see what strategies work, and we can see what strategies don't, and then we can refine it accordingly. So here's an example of we're on our landing page in our site, and we said, here's another example of where we can do context of a dynamic link. In this case, instead of linking to a pen pal, even though that's what the screenshot shows, we could have a contact us link in the app that would link somebody into a chat room with our support staff or people who can answer questions about the application itself. And then that becomes a strategy for how we can grow the app by getting people to use our app to speak with us.
You can also tie your Firebase Analytics account with AdWords account to make your acquisition strategy smarter. Say, for example, you're trying to get users who chat in Spanish. Now, from your Firebase AdWords account, you can import the event where users sent a message in Spanish and track its performance in your AdWords Analytics account to measure whether you're getting the right kind of users or not. You can also create custom audience and show ads to them. This could be an amazing way to retarget users. Say, for example, some users tried to access your app and chat in a different language that was not supported earlier. Now you can build an audience, and once you start supporting this language, you can target notifications to them and bring them back to your application. So we've done all the work that will help people find our app and get them to install it. But to make an impact and ensure they stay engaged with our app Really Friendly Chat, we want to have a great activation strategy. First of all, something like Really Friendly Chat has a user-based experience. A user needs to sign into the app, log in with their account, and then end up directly where they can chat with a pen pal. Now, to make this experience seamless, we have Firebase Authentication. Lawrence, could you share more info about it?
Sure, definitely. So the idea behind Firebase Authentication is to make it as easy as possible to sign up for your app and sign into your app. But before I do that, shall we sign into a T-shirt? OK, I see some hands in the middle. Let's try a higher pressure shot.
Woo.
Oh, nice catch. One-handed. I hear the 49ers are looking for receivers. You should give them a call. So I'm a Seahawks fan, sorry. Anyway, so authentication, Firebase Authentication is one of the biggest things that we see user drop-off in apps is if they have a very user-hostile sign-up experience. Because after all, Parul and I are strangers to you, and if you're going to a Play Store and you're installing our app, and then suddenly we're asking you for your name, for your address, for a reset email, for a phone number, all of this kind of stuff, that's something that could turn you off very easily. So Firebase Authentication has been designed with that in mind, so it allows federated identity from different providers, such as Facebook, GitHub, Twitter, and of course Google. And as you saw in the overview and in the keynotes yesterday, then we've added phone auth to that as well, so that instead of even giving details such as like your email address, you'll be able to sign in with your phone number. And another really neat thing that's in there that we find that will allow you to have a friction-free sign-up experience is anonymous authentication. So anonymous authentication allows you to effectively sign in and go through the security rules in Firebase in an app, but without providing a username and password. So we thought, this is a really nice thing if we're activating our users, that once they start our application, that they have an initial experience that doesn't turn them off, and hopefully is one that delights them. Another one that we said, hey, look, a great way of activating users is initial delight. And as we saw when I was demoing it earlier on, that we said, we want to have a fast, fluid, seamless experience. In something like this, we were doing translation, and it's a great strategy. Again, it's like if the user's context, if what you're bringing them to do, you activate that instantly, you bring them to that as quickly as possible. It was a one-tap sign-in, and then suddenly I was connected with a pen pal, in this case, my imaginary friend Ayako. And so I was connected. Oh, trivia question, by the way, I'll give a free t-shirt to whoever sees me first in the sandbox and tells me where she's come from. She's not entirely an imaginary friend. Everybody's going to Google it now, just watch. So, anyway, so the idea is like if I sign into the application and I have an initial experience that delights me, that's giving me exactly what I want to do, and which is fast and fluid, they're not fishing for context, they're not looking for pen pals, and they're in the application and they're using it right away, doing something interesting. Now, part of this comes from remote config. Now, I've spoken with a number of developers over time, and I chatted with one developer that built a customized onboarding experience with remote config that I thought was really interesting because they built a cookbook application, and if you were at the Firebase Grow session earlier on, you would have seen it. And by providing a customizing onboard for people who are interested in cooking, so for example, if I want to cook Chinese food, I'd have Chinese screens. If I want to cook Indian food, I'd have Indian screens. Initially, as soon as I sign in, they were actually almost able to double their growth overnight by using remote config to give that customized onboarding experience and Firebase Auth to reduce friction in signing in. So we thought, hey, should we do this ourselves, right? And if we want to sign in, we want to give them, for example, if they're chatting with somebody in Japanese, we want to give them this really, really pleasant welcoming screen.
So now let's just take up a notch, see if we can learn from our existing users. When Lawrence launched the app, he saw this really nice shade of Sakura pink.
Yeah, that's not really my thing, though.
But you were visiting Japan, pink, cherry blossom. I feel it's really nice.
Yeah, still not my thing, sorry.
OK, so now let's see what we can do about it. Remote config is driven of analytics. So we could, for example, say that we'll give this really nice shade of Sakura pink to all the Japanese people who sign into our app. And for all boring guys like Lawrence, we'll have the same standard plain UI.
That's much, much better, I think. So once we've gone beyond the background color, then part of the next experience in using the app to be delighted was to have a responsive, fast, fluid app. So for that, we used the Firebase RealTime Database. And one of the neat things about the RealTime Database is it works cross-platform. You've probably seen it and heard a lot of it. But it's this event-driven database instead of like a query-style database. Allows you to have these instant responsive updates in your app. It makes it really nice. And it works really well in the circumstances of flaky networks. So for example, with something like a chat app, that's really important. Now, think about I'm chatting with my new best friend in Japan, and she travels through a tunnel, and she loses connectivity, then what's going to...
Well, the tunnels in Tokyo are really well connected.
OK, so I'm chatting with my new best friend in Japan, and I travel through a tunnel, and I lose connectivity. Then I don't want to lose the context of my conversation. What's going to happen? Well, you know, if I built this and I was using the real-time database to store my chats, then I'm going to get, with a little bit of code, I'm able to get a resync. So once I come out of the tunnel, and now I'm reconnected to the web, that I can actually synchronize up all my chats. So all that time that I was offline isn't wasted, and I'm not alienating my new best friend by not chatting with her. Should we take a look at the code of what it takes to build that? Here it is.
Well, I can't see anything there.
That's exactly right. I didn't need to write any code to do it whatsoever. Without a single line of code, You know, as I was using the Firebase RealTime Database, then I was able to get this offline, online reconnection. And I see everybody getting their cameras, so I'm going to aim at them. So, Firebase Analytics targeting is far better than mine.
Acquiring users and delighting them is great, but it's not enough to have them engaged with your application for a long time. With the amount of competition there is between devices, apps, sites, I really feel that really friendly chat would get lost in the mix. That's why we need a really good retention strategy. So a friend of mine from Myntra, one of the top e-commerce apps in India, decided to use target notification for re-engagement. They saw a 200% increase in conversion rate and a 300% increase in open rate. Notifications are a great way, when used properly, can really help target the right kind of users and bring them back to your application. But let's face it, a lot of times we get the spammy notifications, and they really annoy us. So we can have our notifications be driven off analytics to target the right kind of audience. Say, for example, there's certain users who've not used our application in a while and had made purchases in the past. Now, if we want to bring this audience back, we can create it as a separate audience of all those users who made purchases in the past, and then target a coupon code so they can use it to buy it. This will really help us prevent the terrible, terrible issue of notification spam. Lawrence, could you show us a quick demo of how notifications would work?
That spam's making me hungry. Can we change to the laptop, please? So I want to show a very basic example here. So any Android Studio users here? OK, good, a few of you. So you know, if you use Android Studio, the very basic application you can build is file, new, application, and it populated with an empty activity. So that's what I've done here. I haven't written any code in this whatsoever. A new empty activity application. And then on the right-hand side, I used the Firebase Assistant to just click two buttons. Number one was to connect my app to Firebase, and number two was to add FCM to my app. I've done nothing else other than create it and click those two buttons. And now I've run the app, and the app is running here. And you can see it's the boring old application. I call it Pirate Metrics Notification, and it has Hello World in the middle. But this app is now actually activated to receive real-time notifications. And just to prove this to you, I'm going to open the notification composer, and I'm going to pick the app. I have a number of copies of that app in this project, so I'll pick the Pirate Metrics Notification one, and I'll enter a message. But somebody give me the message that I'm going to enter, so you know it's real. What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear on the stage. Yo-ho matey. OK, that's a great one. Yo-ho matey. Ask Parole about the parrot. We had a parrot and she lost it. So I'm going to put that in, and I've just embarrassed you now, Parole, sorry about that. And I'm going to click send message, and ooh, I right-clicked somewhere. I'm going to click send message, and I'm going to click send on this. And if you come over here to the emulator, it should, demo gods, be with me. OK, I'll launch a t-shirt while we're waiting. What should happen if it's behaving, but it's not behaving, is that when devices are connected, notifications are generally received on connected devices. With about 98% of notifications are received in less than 500 milliseconds. I think I'm one of the 2% right now. I'll check out in a moment. Anybody? Woo. Oh. They're going to get mad at me. So, all right, I'll move on from the demo. I'll get that one working later, and I'll show it to you. So if we switch back to the slides. That was the coding demo. So I want to talk a little bit about app indexing next. So we've been talking about all of these strategies that are part of Pirate Metrics, and we're thinking about the technologies that we use and try to fit them into our growth hacking strategy. And app indexing is a really interesting one. Anybody here use app indexing out of interest? OK, cool, good. So I think I'm going to make your day. So if you have a site that contains content, and you have an app that contains the same content, then all you have to do is to connect your site to your app using asset links in Android or using universal links in iOS. And what happens is when the Google Spider crawls the website and it sees that your app is associated with that site, then people who have installed that app can then render the content in the app instead of going to the site. Now, if you think about this, this is logical because if people have spent the time and effort to install your app on their device, they've sent a signal that says, I'm interested in this type of content in this app. So for example, if you're a sports fan and you want to see if you install like an application for your favorite sports team, if that application had built app indexing into it, and all they had to do, like I said, is put these links on the site to connect the two, and then on the application itself, build something that receives incoming links and renders them in activity or a view, then what will happen is users searching the web for scores or news or details about that team are getting re-engaged with your app automatically. It's a very, very simple investment. And at 3:30, we're actually going to be talking and demoing where Yahoo Japan built this into their app in just a couple of weeks and achieving great growth and great re-engagement through that. And the neat thing, like I said, is that, hey, we all install way too many apps on our devices. And what happens when we start running out of space? What happens when we move to a new device? Those are the apps, if you're not constantly engaged with them, if people aren't going to your app as part of their daily workflow, those are the apps that get uninstalled to make room. Those are the apps that get forgotten when you transfer to a new device. And we think app indexing is a really powerful technology to re-engage your users to do that.
Like Lawrence mentioned earlier, friends help friends discover great apps. There's absolutely nothing as important that can help your product go viral as a word-of-mouth campaign. So for instance, if I saw a recipe of sea cookies and I wanted to share it with Lawrence, so he could bake me some.
If you want me to make you sea cookies, you're in big trouble because my cooking is notoriously bad. I have ended up in the hospital with my cooking, true story. But if Parul wanted me to do that and she said that there was an app and there was an app with a recipe for these, well, what's the workflow generally going to be? I'd go to my device, I'd go to the Play Store, I'd search for a recipe app, and have you ever done that? There are hundreds of them. So I'd be like, okay, Parul, which recipe app? And she'd be like, the one with the orange icon or something like that. Yeah, and I'd be like, okay, there's dozens of those. And then it would take me time to find the app, and then I have to search for the Seabiscuit recipe, and there may be more than one. And that's a lot of friction. So how do we make that easier?
I guess we'll probably have it a little easier, considering there are not a lot of chat applications out there.
That's true, and even less from Google.
Well, you can still make your users' life a lot easier. So we have Firebase Invites to help you do just that. Firebase Invites is built on top of dynamic links. It provides you a separate picker that does not tell you which apps you want to use to share your application, but actually gives you a list of contacts that you can share your application with. And it has context to put the top contacts and the most relevant contacts right on top of the list. Lawrence, could you show it to us?
Sure. Can we switch to the demo laptop, please? So I'm back on my really friendly chat right now, and I'm chatting with my imaginary friend, and she's not going to do app invites because she doesn't have any friends. So it's just going to be me. I'll do some app invites. And app invites is a drop-in widget, as Parul mentioned, that you can use within your apps. It's an easy API. I'm going to show the iOS code for it in a second. But what it does is it gives you the typical system dialog that you will see when you want to share an application. And I don't know if you just noticed that when I launched this application, there was a bit of a spinning wheel before it gave me these top 6 contacts. Because what's going on here is that there's a lot of work being done by Google in machine learning and in AI to try and figure out that when you're in a context of trying to share an application, instead of just giving you an A to Z list, it thinks about the context of what's going on right now. And it's picking the top people on this list from people that I'm regularly emailing with, or maybe it's the time of week that I'm doing it, or it's applications that I've already shared with them that they've installed, or it's both have the same types of applications, that kind of thing. And as a result, then it's giving me this dialogue, and as you can see, it's picked 6 people that I'm most likely to interact with. And it's really funny because if we can switch back to the slides. So today is Thursday, and Parul and I have rehearsed this talk on the last 3 Tuesdays. And usually when I show this, there's one contact that showed up that didn't show up here. And I wish he did, because typically on Tuesdays I chat with this guy because we have breakfast on Wednesdays. And on Tuesdays we're chatting about where we're going to go for breakfast on Wednesday. And he shows up as one of my fast contacts. But he didn't today because unfortunately it's Thursday. But that's just showing that it's how the intelligent sorting is going on. Because again, we were talking about we want to reduce friction in having friends share content with friends. And one great way of doing that is like, how many contacts do you have in your address book, Carol?
Probably 600.
Okay, she's got about 600 contacts in her address book. And my surname begins with M. So if we just did it by basic sorting, she'd probably have to filter through 300 people, because M is in the middle of the alphabet, before she could share with me. But because Parul shares a lot of apps with me, if she were to do this, then I would be at the top of the list. And again, friction-free, make it easy to share. And all that comes automatically when you're using Firebase Invites. So here's the source code for Firebase Invites, how I did it in the really friendly chat that you see here. As an iOS developer, I generally prefer Objective-C. I never got into Taylor Swift. Sorry about that. So, and here's all that I have to do. There's an FIR invites object, and I use that to create an invites dialog. And that's it, that first line of code, and that's what gave me the dialog. And then on the dialog, I set the delegate for it to be this particular view that I'm in. And what that will do is it will give me this callback once the invites have been sent. And this callback is like invite finished with invitations. And in this callback, my code here is a little bit dumb. It's just going to show a dialog that says, I've sent 10 invitations. But if we're thinking in terms of pirate metrics and we're thinking in terms of growth hacking, now I could do something really interesting here, where, for example, I could create a custom analytic, and I could store that custom analytic. So if I've now just shared really friendly chat with 20 people, I could have an analytic put on it that I've shared it with 20 people, and we could build a rewards mechanism in so that we get that sustained growth through friends referring, and we give an incentive from friends referring friends to great content and great apps. So now when it comes to before we release our app and when we test our app, there's really two phases. Okay, the first of these is what do we do before we ship it? And the second of these is what do we do after we've shipped it? How do we maintain and keep our app up to date after we've shipped it? And I like to put this in the terms of referrals, because bad testing on your app and bad reviews on your app are effectively referrals from strangers. How many times have you gone to take a look at an app in the Play Store and you look at the reviews and you look at the one-star reviews and you go, I'm not installing that app. That's effectively a stranger has given you a bad referral. And if it's a 5-star review and it encourages you to install that app, that's a stranger giving you a good referral.
And like Lawrence mentioned, we have to be able to handle crashes after we ship the application as well. And that is why we now have Crashlytics, which is part of Firebase. Crashlytics provides actionable insights down to the line of code which led to the crash of your app. So Lawrence, what do you think? Shall we investigate putting into this app? I know you're a great coder, but still.
I think you're a pretty good coder too.
Well,
you can do it in iOS, I'll do it in Android. How about that?
Well, let's see about that.
Actually, one thing I forgot to mention before we move on to performance monitoring is that if you want to test your application and make sure that it works before you ship, there's something called Test Lab for Android. And actually, a quick survey here. How many here have Pixel XL? One. Can I borrow it for 6 months? No? Anybody want to loan me one for 6 months before I can ship this? No. They always say no. Anyway, OK. So the idea is, like, if you're building an application, I don't have a Pixel XL. I wish I did. And I'm building this app, and I need to know what it looks like on a Pixel XL and test it before I ship my application. And this gentleman won't loan me his, so what do I do? Even worse, what if I can't buy a Pixel XL in my country? Or what if I want to ship it to ship my application to other countries where the phones that are most common in that country, I don't have in my country? So that's what Test Lab for Android is all about. And what Test Lab for Android does is that Google have put together a data center with physical and virtual versions of all the common devices, and particularly all the obscure devices that you may not be able to get your hands on. And if you build your application as an APK, you upload it to this data center, and then once it's in this data center, it can be tested, and crash reports and stat traces of what's going on and all that get fed back to you. There are custom tests that you can design that are specific to your app, and then there's robo-tests from Google that, testing the basic things, open, close, log in, log out, all of that kind of thing. So as a result now, I can test it on all of these devices, and I don't need to borrow that gentleman's Pixel XL. So then after we ship, there's performance monitoring, right?
Yes. And we have to ensure that our app is behaving in an optimized manner after we ship the application as well. For example, if it is eating too much network or bandwidth, causing it to slow down, we can now use app monitoring tool to make sure that this data is being tracked. And combined with Crashlytics, in case it's also leading to crashes, we can optimize the future versions of the application and make sure that those issues are resolved. And finally, making money. Firebase makes it a lot easier for you to track all your revenue in one place. Do drop by at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, same at this stage. Sorry, it's at stage 5. You'll probably also find us sitting at the back making notes. It's a great session on AdMob and Firebase Analytics working better together. Lawrence, what do you think? Will you be able to show us a demo of dropping an ad into
Sure.
chat?
And apparently they're renaming that session to Hangover Cure. So if you want to go over there at 8:30 in the morning after the party, it'd be good. But let's take a look at what it looks like to actually add and the code that we have for adding an ad into Really Friendly Chat. And if you remember when I was showing Really Friendly Chat a moment ago, you probably saw the banner ads in there. That's just running on a test machine, so the banner ads were just showing basic stuff. But if you think about when you want to put ads into your application, the important thing is that if you're putting ads and you're taking up some of your users' eyeballs and taking up some of their attention span with an ad, a very important thing is that the ads are contextually relevant. And with AdMob, one of the neat things is that it's very easy to put an ad in an app, which I'll show in a moment, but the ads that they're going to be getting are very contextually relevant. So if this was a real app that I was showing and I'm chatting with my friend in Japan about Japanesey things, I'd be probably getting adverts for travel sites, hotels in Tokyo, new anime shows, all of that kind of stuff. And so let's take a look at the code for that. Now, I've been showing iOS code all the time, so I'm going to switch back to my favorite Android.
Hey.
And in Android, if you know, in your layout file, you're just going to simply add a thing called an ad view, which is Google ads GMS, ads ad view. So you drop an ad view object onto your layout file. You give it an ad unit ID, which is the second parameter from the bottom, which is just that @string /banner ad unit ID. So when you've signed up for AdMob and you're creating your ads and you're creating your ad campaigns, you get these unit IDs. You put that in there. If you're a good Android programmer, you have a separate strings file with that in it. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm referring to that string. And then within my view itself, all I have to do to initialize the ad is this. We're all familiar with creating a handle to a control by using find view by ID to get it. And now I just create a new ad request off of an ad request builder and load the ad request into the ad view. And that's it. So I've dropped one view, I've dropped one control onto my view, I've written 3 lines of code, and now I have the power of like Google advertising and all the smart matching that's going on in that advertising that I can put into my app, and that will hopefully help me monetize my app.
Another really powerful element is in-app purchases, or is tracking of in-app purchases in Firebase Analytics. No line of code is required at all. For example, if we had a sticker pack in our app, it will automatically be tracked as an in-app purchase without us doing anything at all. Great.
So we've designed Firebase, I'm still trying to get that demo to work. We've designed Firebase to give you this suite of technologies for sustained growth. The thing about growth is all too often we build an application, we put it in the Play Store, we put it in the iStore, and maybe we hope to get slashdotted, or maybe we hope to go viral because a celebrity is using it. And very, very few can achieve sustainable, successful growth in that way. So the idea with Firebase, and as we've designed it, and the Firebase Grow technologies, is to think about what are the common frameworks that growth hackers are using to systematically, to programmatically, and to deterministically grow their applications. Now, Pirate Metrics is a beautiful one of these because it helps you to think about the 5 phases of launching an application and growing it with the public. So we've built Firebase in that way so that you're not buying a lottery ticket. If you're building your application and you're pushing it into one of the stores, then you can think about acquisition through the acquisition technologies. You can think about activation through the activation technologies. Similar for retention, similar for referral, and there's something in there for revenue. And we are really only getting started with this. So as we continue to grow and evolve the Firebase platform, we're continuing to grow and evolve all of these. And don't forget, all of these are bound together by analytics, and analytics is something that we're also continuing to grow and evolve. And if you're building and you're launching a new application, what you can start thinking of is launching it using Pirate Metrics. You have everything before you've gained a single analytic to give you a strategy. But then once your application's out there and analytics start coming in, usage patterns start coming in, then you can start refining your model. You can start refining how you're acquiring people. You can start refining how you're activating and retaining them and all that kind of stuff. So we think there's a beautiful suite of technologies here. Most of them are free to use when they work. Like my cloud messaging didn't, I'm sorry. But all of this is something that will help you to get that sustained growth without buying a lottery ticket or hoping to be slashdotted.
Yeah, and I must mention, we have Dave Makiura to thank for this, for providing this amazing framework that will help you launch your app, grow it, and really sustain it in the long run. So that's it from us, guys. Thanks a lot for attending this session.